Jump gate activated. I love saying that.
Boom, la. We're here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Zocalo. This is your one-stop shop for all things Babylon 5. My name is Shar. That guy is Norm. We are your lovely hosts on this lovely program. Mm-hmm. And we've got a hell of a topic to discuss today. Oh, for my. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was your brainchild.
Yeah, we had a really good run of a couple of top fives or best of lists, and those were a lot of fun. Engage the audience in a lot of different ways because it's a very subjective thing, and our lists are going to be different from day to day to day. So it depends on how good your morning was or how good your evening was that you're going to decide. Yeah, these are going to be my top 5 favorite episodes. Are going to be my top. Hey, BC.
Yeah, there is some fun in that because it is subjective and it can change at a moment's notice. You don't have to give any rhyme or reason. It just is what it is in that particular moment and space of time. And that leads to great discussion. However, it is fun every now and then to get into the deep dives of the Babylon 5 fandom, just because there is some really good stuff that we can dig into. We have dug into some of it before. We have plenty more to dig into the future. But this is one that you've been wanting to tackle for a long time. And frankly, this one doesn't get the attention that it deserves.
Yeah, the aspect of what we're talking about in this episode, the aspect of the Mindwipe controversy, is something it's in Babylon 5. But when you really think about what the Mindwipe has the potential of being, if you look at it, the overall picture of how it fits into the world building of Babylon 5, it has a very interesting connotation to it when it comes to society, societal views, morality, the bigger picture that could actually even fit into the world building views of the Vorlons. So I tested you about.
Oh my gosh! Just a slight giveaway. We've been discussing this on and off throughout the week, and we have brought up a lot more questions amongst each other, me and Norm, than we have any answers. And in fact, we have no answers. We're just going to ask a lot of questions and make you think about them. So I hope you're all ready for that.
For sure.
Let's say hello to BC and Earl. Earl, did you drink the bleach? Please tell me you didn't.
He said he washed his mind with some disinfecting wipes all ready to go.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's not good. Earl, are you okay? Please tell us.
If he did, would he even remember doing it?
I don't know.
So that's the good thing, right?
Can somebody please go check on Earl? I'm frightened. I'm worried about him now. Hello, Torolf, and hello, Summer, Slice of Sci-Fi. It has been a long time. It's very good to see you.
So let's kick this off with our standard salute to all of the people that are joining us either now or later.
Let's do that. Let's vow to. Yes, finishing off a little bit of a drink here, but I want to be mostly coherent for this one because we are going to go deep. And before we get to that, though, we do have a couple of small housekeeping things we ought to take care of.
Yes,
you might know that the screen is a little bit different. Norm, do you want to talk about the details of that?
Yeah, so what's going on right now is that Shar and I are looking into creating a little bit more of a robust platform for us. We're still going to be on YouTube. We're just trying to figure out what the best plan for us is going to be moving forward for basically for a financial side of it and just for an overall rebranding side of it. So in the next weeks, possibly months to come, we're going to be looking at just kind of rebranding this entire aesthetic of what this looks like. Shar and I think that we should just take it up a notch because we've had so many new people come into the show. There's so many more people that are Babylon 5 fans now than I think I've ever met before, either online or here, which is fantastic. And thanks to HBO Max for doing that, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many people we know are watching Babylon 5 for the very first time. It's been so much fun looking at things like tweets as people report back on how they're thinking and feeling as they're going through the series. And I think, Norm, you said it was making you jealous.
People are
doing it for the first time.
It is, but at the same time, though, it's like knowing a secret, the answer to a secret that no one else knows. There was one person, I have to say, though, one person that I started engaging with online where one of her tweets said, "I can't believe that Londo just did that thing in the cave with Rifa." I'm like, oh my God, you got there. You got there, right?
Oh man, it's so much fun seeing friends watch this show for the very first time. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, you just wait.
Right.
You just wait. This is just the beginning. And you're so excited for them. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. I also want to say hi to Terry Lynn. Hello. And hello, DC Stevens. Yes, alcohol is a disinfectant. So is this a brain wipe? I mean, sometimes it is, depending on how much you consume, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can be.
That can happen. Be. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope most of those days are behind me. Like, I don't try to get just completely sloppy anymore. Like when we did the drunk history, that was as bad got, I think.
We got to do that again, though.
That was a lot of liquor to get to that state. Wow.
Yeah, but it was fun though. I got to admit.
It was a lot of fun, but I'm really glad we haven't done it since. My liver thanks us all.
Yeah, that's like a once a year thing, just to recover.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Sure. And you have it's sort of like when you get your COVID shot the day after, you need some time to recover.
Yeah.
At least that second one. Speaking of which, we both did. We're good now. Yay.
I think so. No third eye. I'm very excited about that.
Didn't even see Bill Gates. I was kind of disappointed.
No, but I'm totally what do they call it now? I am 5G. I am 5G now. Yeah. I don't know what that means, but the kids like saying it. So
it's what the kids say.
Yeah. So we're going to jump into this. I'm going to read the write up here on the notes, and I put actually a link in the notes to the B5 books, Babylon 5 Encyclopedia, the paperback version, because if you do want to have a really good resource that's handy and right there at your fingertips, it's like a Yellow Pages for people who remember Yellow Pages. It's a great resource to have.
For those who remember. Sorry, exactly. Gen Zers, if you're out there.
Yeah, Yellow Pages. What even? So
yeah, they never had such a thing.
The B5 books official Babylon 5 encyclopedia defines the mind wipe as, quote, the state, also known as brain wipe, of having one's memory and personality eliminated, leaving the surviving body a blank state. The term was also used to reference procedures that caused the state. Death of personality sentences were executed via mind wipe, and Nakalan feeder victims suffered from being mind wiped as well. But that's unquote. But the thing is, Char, is like what we're talking about today is the moral implications are more complex than what I think we believe them to be as we have researched the mind wipe and its effects throughout the show. Is it just a method of merciful, quote unquote, corporal punishment?
Quote, quote.
Does the death of personality offer the condemned an actual second chance as the vessel for service and servitude to the general public? Or is there something more sinister in creating a being devoid of the individuality of life's experiences, creating a slave or an assassin or a sleeper agent or worse? So the mind wipe, to what end is it, or to whom does the mind wipe actually serve? That's what we're looking at here.
Yeah, those are some of the overall things that we're going to get into today. Because I think when you hear about it just generally at first, it sounds like a more merciful alternative to the death penalty. And on paper, it probably looks great.
Right.
But
yeah, the thing on paper, it's merciful up to a point, right? So let's take a look at what the mind wipe is. So when you have criminals that have been, they have been, for all intents and purposes, slotted for execution, that their crimes have, they have been found to be as severe as a mind wipe state. The mind wipe in and of itself creates a personality that never existed before, never had the benefit of learning from life's experiences. And that's key thing here. Learning from life's experiences. They are a pre-programmed set of memories dedicated to keeping this person at the beck and call of the public trust. So
yes, very important. Obedience is key here.
Yeah.
So it's a fairly incomplete personality, because if you hear somebody who's been brain wiped talk, their only thing that they've ever wanted to do their whole lives is to serve and to give back. So is it sort of like a template? Okay, you have to get a telepath to do it for starters. So we have so many unanswered questions just from the get-go. How did they devise, what you're going to implement into this person's brain? Who is going to do it? Who's qualified to do it? Yada, yada, yada. Like, do you have to be a P10? What have you? It's really unfortunate that this particular part of the B5 universe was not explored further, because maybe it would have answered a lot of the questions we're going to ask here.
Right, and Summer says Mindwipe could be considered performative justice, and who determines what the new personality will be? That's a great question. That's just kind of like, that's just a jump to what you were saying there. Who gets to decide that? And as far as we know, because the Mindwipe, the sentence itself was done by the kind of like the justice that was serving on Babylon 5 when it came to Carl Mueller's case in Quality of Mercy. That was somebody who had the authority to sentence the Mindwipe. But then again, now you have the Psi Corps involved to actually perform the Mindwipe. And obviously, you're going to need somebody of incredible skill and training to perform this particular operation. And then, do they create the new personality based on what is maybe the complete opposite of what that person was? Because let's take, I'm going to jump, for example, to Passing Through Gethsemane, where you have Brother Edward, he was the Black Rose Killer. So that was a sociopathic serial killer, but they turned his personality into a priest who serves this brotherhood, Brother Theo's brotherhood. And is that because never shall the two personalities ever clash, so that there wouldn't be the opportunity of that old personality bleeding forth? Because the old personality isn't destroyed, it is blocked.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, I don't know, I just very recently rewatched the episode just to refresh. I feel like they're treating the brain as a hard drive where, if you delete a file, you empty the trash and it's supposed to be gone. But there are tools that you can use to recover those old files. They do degrade over time, but if you catch it at an early state of decay, you could theoretically retrieve that deleted file. It's not actually gone because you have to overwrite so many times, yada, yada. So I kind of feel like it's like that. And in Brother Edward's instance, those memories were still there. They were just blocked. And it like, I totally lost my train of thought. Well, Thank you, Bravari.
DC actually comes up with a good point here. And I think you're right. I think that it's a combination of some type of chemical procedure and telepathic confirmation, where the Mindwipe, it's almost kind of like
wait, really?
I think so. I think it's in combination with the telepaths, but just to make sure that the Mindwipe took hold, so that they could peer into the mind.
Maybe this was just some misconception I had, but I thought a telepath performed the Mindwipe. So that could be my bad for having that wrong.
I thought it was both hand in hand. Like it was the Psi Corps. Well, I mean, to clarify, the only people that we've actually ever seen undergo a Mindwipe are citizens, quote unquote, criminals of the Earth Alliance. So this is an Earth Alliance penalty, an Earth Alliance operation.
Yeah.
And the Psi Corps is governed by, if you want to say that they're governed by, the Earth Alliance. They're an adjunct to the presidency. So
that's a good keyword, adjunct, because they're kind of their own entity and yet not. They're very intertwined because humans.
Right. And then Jason Ironheart also alluded to that in the episode, where if they could create a stable telekinetic, you could actually turn that telekinetic into an assassin. And then knowing what they did to Talia, because they basically created the sleeper personality in Talia that had a keyword that would be able to activate her. Now you have the ramifications of being able to Mindwipe somebody, turn them into a sleeper agent, give them the opportunity to, if they were a telekinetic, to be able to turn themselves into an assassin and then activate them later on when they needed to be activated. So that's some insidious stuff going on with you.
Totally, right? Because then obviously the Psi Corps has the capability to do this.
Right.
Let's just say across the board with anybody. But who do you trust to do it?
Right. And why?
I wouldn't trust anybody myself, but
And who writes all of those personalities? It's like, okay, so let's take this like one step laterally. So in Blade Runner, this is Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner. The replicants were androids that were given a personality because they needed like the memories of a certain life in order to keep them stable, right? But they soon realized that they only had a fixed amount of personalities and they wanted more out of their life. than just being these kind of like these pre-programmed automatons. So who authorizes the creation of those stories for people, in that sense? And in the same sense, it's
Sure.
just like here for the Earth Alliance, who are the people that authorize these new lives? And do these life experiences, do they even matter when it comes to crafting a personality? Because say for instance, for Brother Edward, if he remembers something that happened in his childhood that he believes like led him to his calling as a member of the cloth, I mean, how does that inspire him? Did it really inspire him to do that? What
Maybe not. He just feels like it did.
Right. There are so many steps when it comes to forging an actual personality, a human being, a soul, that it's like a program. You can't write every single code that anticipates every single memory or every single memory of that memory ad nauseum, right?
Right. Which makes me wonder, how long of a process was this to develop the Mindwipe? Because as a programmer, you might notice I have a different Twitter handle loaded up here because I kind of launched a more professional thing as a website developer. SharWritesCode.com. It's coming soon. Anyway, yeah, you can try and think of every for and while loop to account for any variable you can possibly think of and still miss a ton of things. That's how we get bugs in software. So imagine the freaking brain.
Well, and that's where the Mindwipe issue comes into play when Brother Edward started to, and yes, he was prompted to start remembering his previous life, by the survivors of the victims, and their families, because they kept pushing like the Black Rose Killers type of personality disorder that was locked away. So that forced Brother Edward to remember who he originally was. So there always is the opportunity for that to actually bleed through. But DC
okay,
also
can we stop right there?
Yes.
Let's discuss this. This is so much stuff here, right here. Okay, number one, this shows that mind wipes are not necessarily thorough. They could be botched, or because those memories are blocked and not completely gone, they will resurface. And it didn't take Brother Edward very long to figure out, through a little bit of research, what actually was going on.
Right.
Now, I think it was Garibaldi in Passing Through Gethsemane who said that the criminal, the offender, is removed from the location where the crimes were committed to basically protect the families of those he affected. Well, what if the opposite is true, as we saw depicted in the episode where the family goes after this person? They eventually figure out who he is and attack. Mm-hmm. It's a very imperfect system.
Well,
who's being protected really? Is anybody being protected?
It's like witness protection failing, right?
Yes.
And it's failing on multiple levels, because the witness protection of the criminal is eliminating their previous personality, then also kind of displacing them from where they originally were to go out there and just hopefully not run into anybody that they've ever affected in their entire life. I mean, the galaxy's a pretty big place, right? But there are
theoretically,
there are those people out there that they were smart enough to figure out,
find them. Sure.
Was his name Charlie, the Black Rose Killer? They're like, okay, what happened to him? Because they're gonna eventually pull together their resources and hunt him down, or hunt ex-criminal down.
Right. When in the case where a mind wipe is not considered sufficient justice.
Right.
Where maybe this person felt like Garibaldi does. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's the only way to properly avenge a criminal act. And particularly murder. Society. One thing I'm unclear on with the mind wipe is it seems to be performed only on those who have killed others. I don't know if that's for sure, but that seems to be the case. Well, so it's only like, is it sort of like a death row type of situation like we have here in the States, where you have to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt to even be considered for the death penalty, and the death penalty doesn't exist everywhere. Is it a very rare thing, or is this a fairly common occurrence that they do with criminals who do murder? Because Garibaldi also says that this was a solution formed to reduce crowding in prisons. Mm-hmm. Well, the only way to reduce crowding in prisons is to keep people out of prison. And if you're mind wiping them and things go well, they're out there serving for the common good, the greater good, what have you, and giving back to the society from which they took, okay, fine. But yeah, just in terms of sheer numbers, I would love to know, is this rare or is it more often than not? And in what circumstances?
Well, it seemed like from your examples and using Carl Mueller and Brother Edward as the examples here, it seems like these were death row level, execution style criminals, right? These are the ones that they would get lethal injection or death by electrocution, like in today's standards, or lethal gas. But instead of doing so, which was, I guess, quote unquote, now inhumane, right, and not incarcerating people to the point where prisons are overpopulated. Now you would actually turn them into beneficial, not self-serving, but serving members of society that are essentially serving the programming of the state, right?
More or less, right? Because who's going to take these people in? It's either going to be the state, as wards of the state, to do whatever they please, or it's going to be serving with a more religious purpose, like Brother Edward here. And, serving with Brother Theo, where somebody's going to be looking over his shoulder a little bit, making sure he's okay. Because who else is going to want him?
Yeah.
Who else is going to want that responsibility? And it's not going to be many.
So let's jump into the comments here, because there are comments
Sure.
flying hot and heavy here. So let's go back to DC.
Yeah.
Look closer towards the top. Actually, let's go to Terry Lynn. So Terry Lynn says,
okay.
Is the Mindwipe any better than the Star Trek Enterprise's episode of experiencing the crime from the victim's perspective periodically over and over forever?
Good question. I do remember that episode, the one with Riker, right? Where he had to relive his crime over and over and over again. They recycled it in Voyager too. Tom Paris had to do a similar thing.
Oh, I remember that. But that was what, season 1, something like that.
In Voyager, it was ex post facto.
Ex post facto, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, and though that comes from a much older story. I think it was there was a story there was a system that carved like your crime into your chest like over and over and over and over and over again. So you branded it like into your flesh. I don't remember who wrote that though, but I remember reading it somewhere.
Okay, that would hurt.
Well, there is a thing, Terry, where, say, you've heard of sentences passed on drunk drivers who their punishment is on the day that they killed a person, with that, particular crime, that they have to go visit the family of the victim every year, to make amends. So that's a way of punishment, just to make them remind them of what they did and the life they took and the lives of the families and that they shattered in doing so. So,
question about that, and maybe you don't know the answer. Does that work? Is it, I guess, cathartic for the family to have that conversation, or is it just more painful?
I have seen instances, like on YouTube videos, where there is a healing process that happens on both sides because. Yes, the mistake was tragic. Yes, the mistake it was manslaughter, but it wasn't murder. So that person was remorseful. But one lady even dropped all charges, saying that the incarceration or ending this person's life who took the life of my child, it doesn't make either of those solve any of this. Right?
Doesn't right the wrongs of what happened.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I suppose it varies on a case-by-case basis. I didn't realize that was something that people did. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of like in this state, or in this case, say Brother Edward. Brother Edward was given a second chance to do and to serve the people, not the same people, not the families, but to serve the people of his parish by giving them the opportunity to find comfort and solace in his faith, right? But it's not his faith. It's the faith of the programming that was put into his predetermined personality. So,
right. So, I mean, it's not actually real, but it feels real to him probably.
But then
until it's not, you know what I mean?
Right. But it's kind of like if somebody like a brother Edward, or even if Carl Mueller, say the Mindwipe took, like he didn't escape, he didn't go down and steal the alien healing device, or what happened to him. We all know what happened to him.
Sure.
But if he actually underwent the Mindwipe and turned into someone who was incredibly, he was just incredibly inspiring to someone else. Maybe he became a poet. Maybe he became a doctor. Maybe he became, a self-help,
a guru of some
guru
sort.
or
Sure.
something like that. And then you had people that devoted their lives because of the inspiration that they received from him. What happens to those people when they realize the person that they drew inspiration from was a mass murderer?
That's a really good question. On the flip side of that, there are folks who become kind of infamous for their crimes, and people flock to them in support, trying to understand who this person really is. Like you see that a lot with serial killers, like a Charlie Manson or a Ted Bundy, what have you. Sometimes people get gravitated towards this type of thing, and they empathize, sympathize, whatever you want to call it, and want to have relationships with these people.
Is it like some type of Stockholm syndrome?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't fully understand the psychology of that. I just know that it happens, and I mean, it sort of creeps me out because because this person did a lot of harm. They killed a lot of people, and you want to be around this person? Seems counterintuitive, but again, I don't know the ins and outs of it. But it's a very interesting phenomenon, in my opinion.
So there's also BC brought up the Abel Horn character, and it's something that I talked to you also, Shar, about in text. Like, there's the Mindwipe from a punitive, operation, where it's it was decided upon that this is how they're going to handle kind of like the extreme criminal cases, in society. But what about people like Abel Horn, who he was a soldier, he was killed, kind of like Universal Soldier. He kept remembering the moment of his death, and then he wasn't really dead anymore when they were able to wipe his personality, turn him into an operative, give him the ability to survive up to a point. Right now, you turn these people into assassins. Serving the government, black operations agents. Right, there's that possibility of, if they wanted to do it, they could take these criminals, they could turn them into these types of operatives that would just serve a section of the government, right? No one knows who they are anymore. They've disappeared without a trace, or people believe that they were, reintegrated into normal society to serve the public trust. What if they weren't?
Ooh, and in Babylon 5 lore, if you're doing this with the Psychor, which we know that they're shady at times, that's really dangerous. Mm-hmm. Because I think DC said earlier something about criminals can lie. And maybe the Psychor isn't necessarily criminal. Depends on your definition of that word, how you want to use it. But they could certainly engineer things to work in their favor, whatever agenda they want to serve. Because really, they're the ones in control here, right? To make sure this happens, quote unquote, properly.
I think that's where the bigger and more terrifying picture, problematic picture, kind of like comes into focus. Because if you take the Mindwipe penalty, removing a person's personality because of implanting a new one in there to serve the public, because that's their penalty. Take that out of the equation and just look at the Mindwipe for what it is. It's the ability to be able to reprogram somebody's consciousness, right? So if you have that ability, and if it's in the right hands, actually in this case, if it is in the wrong hands, say the Psychor or any other shadowy organization, operative organization, if they have that ability to do that, then what's stopping them from doing that to just any normal person?
Right. And who's to say they're not?
And they might be. And that's, and that's
right. I mean, if you think about how many groups of people who just disappear, and a lot of people, like, they may not have families who care about them, what have you, if they're vulnerable populations. In particular, I'm thinking the sex slave trade. You know, people get rounded up into that. They disappear. Nobody really cares. Nobody knows where they are. And off they are around in this life that nobody knows that they're having.
Right.
I mean, this seems like in a whole galaxy of people, that seems very possible. You know, the lost and forgotten vulnerable populations. Oh, and BC has, just to change gears a little bit, has a great comment about whether the human mind wipe and the reprogramming is any different than a shadow vessel pilot. You know, when you get overtaken by a shadow and you become that vessel, is that any different? I mean, my knee-jerk reaction is no. You're kind of overrided, right? You're retaken.
Well, we had this conversation also. It was one of the text notes that I sent you. If you take a kind of look at the whole aspect of the telepaths and being able to have the ability to rewrite people's memories or actually manipulate them from the telepathic level into the subconscious, the Vorlons created human telepaths. The Vorlons are about order above all things. So their doctrine of order and their ability to have created the human telepath, they've probably in some way, I know that this is a little bit more speculative, but they probably in some way created a subconscious level of order when it came to these particular telepaths being able to exact the Vorlons' plans over the grand scheme of their overall, universal doctrine of order. That, in contrast to the shadows, who are about chaos and who are about, the strong shall survive, that they're almost antithetical to being manipulated by telepaths, because telepaths have the ability to reprogram certain thoughts in order to follow a more orderly doctrine. So look at that from more of a macroscopic scale, or a bird's eye view.
I love this so much.
Right?
When you pointed this out over text, it blew my freaking mind, but it's so on brand for B5 because we're talking about order versus chaos, obedience versus disobedience.
Right.
That's Vorlons and shadows.
Right.
It's so pure.
And that's
every little freaking action they do, man.
And that's what BC is kind of, I think he's getting at. It's like the reason why the shadows don't really like telepaths, like screwing around with them, is because they have the ability to be able to, I guess, in a way, influence the process all the way back to kind of like the Vorlons' standards of order. So they're like, no, we evolve and we let the people that or the lesser races evolve with us. In the same way, it's either you evolve through strength, you evolve through conflict, you evolve through, the ability to rise above like certain things or not, but that's your choice. Right.
As long as you're kicking over anthills to see how things react and shape up, yeah, you're serving the agenda.
I want to get back to something that Kenneth said here. So Kenneth Taylor, hello, and thank you for joining us. Brother Edward's faith defined him. That, from a theological perspective, may be sufficient. Trust in the faithfulness of God, Martin Luther advised. And this goes back to if someone else was inspired by the faith of Brother Edward, and they figure out that, or it's revealed that Brother Edward was, Charlie the Black Rose Killer, would that in any way affect or throw someone off the trajectory of that faith? And maybe it was just good enough that people found the faith because of Brother Edward. And maybe because that faith is based on forgiveness, very much like the way that Brother Theo told Sheridan that we were talking about forgiveness when, Brother Edward's killer was mind wiped and turned into someone who served the public trust. So is it good enough that someone would just have found their faith to begin with in order to forgive because of Brother Edward?
I mean, who's to say that's not genuine? I think it's certainly possible to have that sort of effect. That's not, that's not, you can't look back and say, well, that was wrong, or that wasn't real. No, it was. Yeah. With the information you have at the time.
Toralf says here, DC stat, going back to DC, he's responding to DC. That might also be the reason for imprinting a new personality. They have to keep the offender as far away as possible from their first life to make sure they don't do it all over again. I mean, it's kind of like if you take somebody out of kind of like their natural habitat, then it's probably more effective for them to stumble upon certain habits or get triggered for certain memories. Like some people say that, it's like you can't memory of smell, memory of sound, memory of taste. Those things are very powerful. They go way into the subconscious. And it's very well possible that the mind wipe can't reprogram everything.
It's possible. Yeah. And that's under best case circumstances where you take that person out of that environment and you hope it's disorienting enough to kind of create a hard reset, new personality, new location, new life. And they go off and they serve and they do good and try to repent for the crimes that they committed. And yet we did see, at least in some instances, where this went wrong. And I think it's pretty tough because I'm thinking even of an addicted mind. A lot of people, they'll go off to rehab and may choose to go into a completely different environment from whence they came because going back to the old environment is so hard that they know that they're going to fall back into like old behaviors. And yet there is that part of you that's still with you that doesn't guarantee success.
Right.
So it's kind of a crapshoot. It's probably a good idea, but it doesn't mean it's going to work.
I think that's a great point. There are just certain things, and kind of like the animal nature of our very lizard brain still that allow us access to things that are familiar, things that are safe. Things that provide us certain levels of comfort and solitude, and they're very familiar, and familiar things allow you to, they relax, they allow you to feel safe, they allow you to feel secure, but they also allow your brain to remember. It's memories are so incredibly complex, right? They're
sure.
They can go into, you can remember something as far back as, like, you can't even remember how a memory will pop up into your head. So how does the mind wipe actually go in there and just what is the process of all of it? And
sure,
can you, it's like erasing a hard drive. Can you get every single 1 and 0 out of that hard drive for it to not be recovered?
Right. What is considered thorough? There's so many questions about what this process is, how it works. We're just never going to know because we weren't, we don't have the details on that. We're just to presume that it's done the best to the ability that it can be done. And yet it's still fallible. One question I've always had is, what is the likelihood of someone like Brother Edward experiencing some memories surfacing or what have you? Is it a really rare, kind of just very infrequent occurrence in those who've been mind wiped? Or is this actually a likely problem? Let's say it happens in half the people and maybe it causes a problem like it does with Brother Edward, or it's one of those things where maybe something like a smell triggers you and you don't know where it comes from. And then you just kind of shrug it off like, that's weird. Sort of like when you have deja vu.
Yeah.
You're like, and you don't know where that's coming from. You don't know why it's happening, but ultimately you've got to move on with your day. And so then you just kind of blow it off. Mm-hmm. So many questions about mind wipes that we're never going to get the answers to.
Well, I like one of your notes here. I want to kind of jump into the drawbacks of all of it, because that's kind of like where you were getting at. So I like this question that you posed here. Is the mind wipe truly a punishment?
This is a big question, right? Yeah. Okay. And here's my big argument. I'd love to know what our viewers think of this. The criminal, theoretically, gets to forget about what they did. And the people affected by the criminal's crimes don't get that luxury. And is that why it's not like real justice?
Right. That's a great question. And it's been known, right? It's been known, like in certain, that's why incarceration is supposed to, in some way, remind you that you're in this horrible circumstance, jail, solitary, or what have you, for a specific reason. You're being punished and penalized for a crime that you committed against, a group of people, a person, someone who was innocent.
Right.
And you have to reflect on that, in prison.
And if you're a psychopath, you maybe have no resentment about that, but you were at least removed from society and you don't really get to do much with your life.
Maybe that's why they reserve the mind wipe for these type of psychotic criminals. These
maybe
resentless, remorseless criminals.
Well, in the mind of a serial killer, you definitely don't want those folks to just be running out again on the street. Like, the rehabilitation is not going to happen.
Right. But I guess rehabilitation by programming a new personality into somebody is I guess what they're
maybe the next. Maybe that's the closest thing that we have. And so then when you tell people, hey, look, we've got this thing where we don't have to execute somebody and they can serve the people that they've hurt, they can repay their debt to society. We can put them to work. We can make them useful. It sounds great. Seems like a perfect win-win solution, but is it really?
This is, I want to jump in. Gosh, these comments are so good. You guys are the best.
Oh, man.
So DC says, was the Black Rose killer a person with faith before being mind wiped and turned into Brother Edward, or is faith in God and religion something that can be programmed? Followed up by, if the latter, did the Vorlons do this via genetic engineering, or was it really more like myth planting through social interaction and storytelling? That's very interesting.
That is. That's not to say that a person of faith can't be a psychopath and be a killer.
Some people do it because of faith.
Certainly. That's the theory about Jack the Ripper, right? He was killing women because they were being immoral.
Right.
And he thought he was doing good. But on the other hand, the flip side is, maybe they're just instilling this story that this is the way it's always been. This is who you are. This is the way you have always wanted to be. And
this is something that I think you and I discussed before, Shar, about other telepaths being able to influence possible mind-wiped people. Because Summers says, Brother Edward's memory recovery happened because of the Centauri telepath who was paid to break the mind wipe. So if that's the case, and it's true, so that's the case, then a human telepath who was part of the mind wipe process and scanned that, scanned the criminal to make sure that the mind wipe process took effect, that P level was only rated by the Psi Corps. Right. So a Centauri telepath, an unrated P level, and we don't know how many of them are out there or other telepaths. Right. That aren't regulated.
And they seemingly aren't. Yeah, they can be anywhere.
Right. So that person could eventually, if they wanted to, break a mind wipe and let that person, that criminal, back into society if they wanted to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that also, that points out there is at least one big kind of like fail to the mind wipe. Telepaths are going to be going around. They may or may not tap into this person who's been mind wiped. But what if by accident it does happen? Or what if somebody who does perform mind wipes comes across somebody who's been mind wiped and it triggers something? Is there some sort of like legal statute where you have to be so far away from anybody? But how would you accomplish that?
And that's something that, say, for example, somebody like Byron, who served the Psi Corps at the highest level, he was P10, he was a Psycop, he had access to probably all the files of people that had been mind wiped and where they were. What if he basically said, hey, you know what? I have the ability to unlock these people. So give me what I want, or I'm going to let all of these psychopathic criminals return to who they originally were.
And then you're unleashing just a whole array of murderers.
We know that Lita could do that, for sure.
Oh, sure. Sure, easily. Absolutely. And presumably Byron could too, since he was a P10 or higher, about as powerful as a telepath gets. So, I'm just saying there's a lot of slippery slope things here. Right. I think that's really the basis of this whole conversation is the mind wipe seems like a good idea, but in practice, man, there's just so many faults that make it seem like maybe it's not such a great idea.
Well, I mean, Summer asked the same question. It raises, but this raises questions about the true nature of the mind wipe. How powerful a telepath is needed to rebuild those neural pathways? I mean, think about it this way. In some ways, Sinclair had a small amount of a mind wipe situation happening when they removed the 24 hours of when he was captured by the Minbari at the end of the Battle of the Line. So when that Minbari encountered him in the gathering and looked at him and said, "There's a hole in your mind," that triggered something into Sinclair, right? Now that Minbari wasn't a telepath, but it triggered something to make him go deeper into his search, to hire Garibaldi off book and say, "I need you to find something, because there are too many of these strange circumstances that are making me remember certain things about a period of time that I don't remember." Right?
Right? And you would think with an altered mind that the likelihood of that seems fairly strong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Again, we just don't have enough information, but it would seem like just under the right set of circumstances, you could have a lot of former criminals questioning a lot of things, having some major existential crises, figuring some things out that they don't really want to know, like Brother Edward did. Might take more time than others. I don't know. Or is it an instance where after a certain amount of time passes, those memories have degraded because you're not maybe using those neural pathways, and so the brain will prune and basically reuse that space with other things, or not?
Can you imagine this if it was like animated, like in the story of Inside Out?
I've never seen that.
It's a Pixar movie about memory and how the memory is it's how it's represented by these different characters, these 5 or 6 different avatars in your mind, and how the memory works and how you shut off certain things, how certain memories, like you say, they just kind of they wither, they atrophy. If you don't use them, they turn into this nebulous amount of data that's just gray, right? So but, in the mind wipe, I've always believed that those things they're still there. They've just been able to chemically or psychokinetically block them off so that neural pathways can't access those anymore. But like anything, like any procedure, like a surgical procedure, if you're just using stitches break over time, right?
Sure.
The flesh mends over time or weakens over time. These things, like anything, like either alchemically, neurochemically, like in the brain or in the body, they're eventually going to find their way and break loose eventually over time.
Possibly. Right. Maybe it's an instance where the longer you go, the more things have had a chance to atrophy, the harder it gets. Mm-hmm. But the possibility maybe still always exists. Now, Turef has a really interesting comment I want to discuss about the relatives of the victims. Is the only way to help them to mind wipe them as well, to remove those memories so that they can live maybe happier, less tainted lives. I mean, given our discussion, my immediate thought is no, not necessarily. But then you know what? I've also not gone through something like this. I haven't had, say, a family member or a loved one murdered. I don't know how I would feel about that. If somebody could say I could magically take away all of those horrible memories and you could start a life anew without them, I don't know what I would say. What would you think about that?
I would say what Kirk said to McCoy and Spock in Star Trek V. It's like, you just can't wave a magic wand and have your pain taken away.
I need my pain.
That's right. Well, that's a very interesting question.
I'd probably choose that. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but I mean,
it makes you who you are.
Exactly. And it's very well possible that, there are circumstances, I have not anyone in my life, I have not lost anyone to any type of violent crime or murder or accident or things like that. My father did pass away, but he passed away from a disease, it was something that robbed me of him, but it wasn't, it wasn't, he wasn't murdered, or he didn't die in a car crash. So
it wasn't malicious intent.
Exactly. There wasn't any crime kind of like, behind that. So, it maybe like for those people who have suffered something like that, does it like make them cherish the memories of the person they lost more? And would they want to lose like that connection with someone that just galvanized how they felt about them, even to a point where they didn't even expect? you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think a lot of people would say, hey, look, as painful as these memories are, I don't want to not remember this person at all.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's just the flip side of that hurt. It hurts just as much, though.
I mean, I guess in a less invasive way, maybe that there could be some type of therapy using someone from the Psi Corps to help numb the pain, I guess, for lack of a better expression, you know, instead of using drugs or instead of having someone turn to addiction to try and mask that pain, there could be that possibility of like low level, you know, telepathic, you know, manipulation just to try and ease their suffering.
Maybe like a telepathic antidepressant of sorts.
Something like that, yeah. And maybe that's one of the services that the Psi Corps provides.
You know, I wonder if that is a real thing. Is that a service that they offer to non-telepath humans? It's not something that was ever discussed in B5, but boy, wouldn't that be an interesting way for them to make some money?
And market themselves as a positive force for the public good.
Yes, we're here to help you.
Exactly. So
interesting thought.
We're counselors, right? You can trust us.
Because we deal with the mind.
Right.
And we use the symbol for psychology, therefore.
Earl says, what the Minbari don't have is a talking pug. We don't know that.
I mean, we know they have gawks.
Yeah. We don't know if they talk.
We know that.
We know that they remind us never to take ourselves too seriously.
That is absolutely right. I have to imagine they do.
DC says, if a person who dies lives on in the memories of others, then mind wiping a murder victim's relatives and other loved ones would seem to destroy the victim twice.
That's a good point. And it really, how much do you do this? To what end? Are you going to completely erase this person from everybody's brain who ever interacted with them? That seems a little extreme. So again, a very slippery situation that's probably not for the best. I like DC's other comment slightly above about this is a great idea for maybe somewhat of a failsafe. And maybe if B5 lore explored Mindwipes a little more, we'd know something about this. But having like a signature saying, hey, red alert, this person was Mindwiped, don't tamper with them, to a telepath saying, keep away. Or at least some sort of indication for them to know. That's a really smart idea.
I'd love for you to touch on the point about, does everyone who undergoes a brainwipe serve in a religious organization? I think that's fascinating. Where are you going with that?
Well, meaning that somebody whose Mindwipe is at least a former criminal now in most people's eyes, because they're quote unquote a new person with at least a different personality, right? Well, who's going to take them in? It's either going to be the state, because I guess basically they're in their custody, or a religious organization, because one, not many other people are going to want them, but then serving that higher purpose to do good and kind, we often equate that to a more religious cause, where you're serving not for the money, you're doing it just kind of for the betterment of people, for humanitarian reasons, to just be good and do good in the world. And at the same time, there's a certain amount of trust people put into religion.
Well, I mean, you could do that, or you could put them actually in real service and turn them into a ground pounder and send them off to war. Right?
You could. And who's not to say that that isn't something Earth Force does? I mean, if you don't want to go into a religious institution, maybe you're trained to be a soldier.
Yeah.
And you're a Gropo and you just wanted to be a soldier your whole life. I mean, we really didn't explore this enough to know the full breadth of what you can do with a Mindwipe. I think that's completely possible.
This is an interesting comment. Eagle, I don't know how to say your name.
Eagle Helmson?
Helmson? We do not need the Psi Corps for this. Current research suggests that remembering trauma while under mild sedation reduces the strength of the memory. Eventually, it's just a fact, not a trauma.
Interesting. I'd like to know more about that. Is this a form of therapy, or what is this about? Yeah. I don't know. Tell me more.
Yeah, tell us more in the few minutes that we have left. But yeah, I think you're right there, Kenneth. JMS said that the other monks, aside from Brother Matthew, were not mind-wiped criminals. I think that when Brother Matthew was introduced to Sheridan at the end of passing through Gethsemane, I think it was just more to illustrate the point of what Brother Theo was trying to try and make sure that Sheridan was seeing both sides of the equation, and Sheridan swallowing his pride a little bit and not being a hypocrite.
Sure. And also, I think to unnerve us just a little bit.
Yeah.
As an audience, because it certainly did that to me. I was just like, oh, that's him.
Right.
Oh, which also raises some minor questions. Okay, what telepath was there to do the mind wipe? I'm guessing on Babylon 5.
I would have to say yes.
Because it was a quick turnaround, and it had to have happened there or near there.
Well,
so yeah, who was there? Did Bester show up and we didn't get to see that? What was going on?
I have to believe that Talia wouldn't be strong enough to be able to do a procedure like that.
Talia wasn't on B5 at that point. This was season 3. So it was Lita. This was Lita's return, in fact, but Lita was not a member of the Corps.
Right. So there was no resident telepath that we knew about on the station.
No. So somebody had to have come out to do the mind wipe, presumably.
I'm hoping it was Herman.
Or they sent him off someplace and then he came back.
Most likely. Yeah.
Just throwing that out there. A little question I had while I watched the show.
Yeah, but it was a quick turnaround. So you're just like, yeah, where did that happen? How did that happen?
Yeah, where did that happen? Yeah, so quick that I had to put it under question. Yeah. All right, we're nearly at an hour, Norm. So I would love to know, are there any other points that you want to make about mind wipes? Any final thoughts? We're going to have to wrap up.
Well, I guess let's go back to our original question. Is a mind wipe an actual second chance, or is it a cruel punishment?
Good question. I have no answers after this. I mean,
because
it didn't help me reach any answers. How about you?
We say that, Babylon 5, is the station of second chances. I love when Ivanova says that at the end of Sleeping in Light, and we see that, from time and time again. I guess it really depends on the circumstance, because if a person that is mind wiped and they actually do live a fruitful and fulfilling life serving the public and doing good, by this second chance, at least it's the second chance for, and I'm not even really sure if I believe this, but I have to say something, the body to serve. Right? If you have an able-bodied vessel that can serve, and it's been programmed with the intentions to serve the general public, then that also raises a lot of its own questions. Then is this person actually a slave?
Sure, because they're serving, and really, I mean, is this just another form of incarceration, more or less? Maybe they don't feel incarcerated, but same difference, just maybe in a prettier package. And we haven't even gotten into the whole thing about, I mean, the soul. Where is this replacing a personality? Is this fracturing a soul? Can you replace a soul? What does this do to the soul? We don't even have the time to get into all of that. Maybe that's another show.
Yeah, we can continue that later on in Discord, because we have our Discord
that would
panel.
Be great. Let's do that, because we do have the Discord, and I'll put an invite link in shortly. Let's keep the conversation going there, because we have a fantastic group of people, most of which who are here, but not limited to everybody. Right. So let's do that.
While you're doing that, though, I mean, I really do like that question, because it kind of goes into the whole, what is the personality and what is the soul? Right? Is one analogous to the other? Are they flip sides of the same coin? If you change someone's personality, do you change the contents of what their soul actually is? Does the soul govern the body? Does the soul govern the motives behind, your thought? And if you change the ability of someone to think a certain way, to act a certain way, and give them a pre-programmed, predetermined destiny, right? Because that's the thing about the mind wipe, right? It's like you're putting in a facsimile of memories. So
sure.
They're not your memories. They're memories of just a combined narrative that's been pre-programmed to get put into someone's body, someone's open vessel of a mind.
Yeah, they're manufactured, I guess.
Right. So everything that they said or do or remember or not, that has nothing to do with the person that evolved up to this point, right?
Right.
So that means that they're not necessarily independent thinkers in that sense. They didn't arrive to the
Yeah.
conclusions organically in that life. They're only following a prepackaged destiny, right? So
Yeah, it's a pretty narrow directive that they're
right.
following.
Now, if that person, once they're activated with this new personality, everything after that becomes their own experience. Everything prior to that is the experience that has been already reprogrammed into this new body, into this new mind. So like making those, well, not even making those things, like making those little trinkets and stuff like that Brother Ed was really good at. Charlie didn't learn those.
No.
Right?
Edward did.
Edward learned those. But Edward didn't learn those. The program taught him those. Right?
Well, or is it where, I mean, you have Edward with the baseline of the programming, but he kept going. He's evolving. He did learn that skill as Edward.
Yeah. Did he though? I mean, the impetus of learning that skill, where did that come from?
Well, yeah. He's got that baseline of programming, and then that's just about it.
Yeah.
Again, we just don't have enough detail. Like, how much does this programming do for you? Like, presumably you are able to read and speak and talk, use your motor skills, what have you, but how much education beyond that do you have? What sort of, like, are you predetermined to have certain skill sets?
Or are you predetermined to have inspiration? Imagination?
Don't know.
Right?
Don't know. We can't answer that.
These are the things, as humans, these are the things that kind of drive us forward, things that inspire us,
right.
Beauty, poetry, art, music, the ability to thrive, the ability to compete, the ability to find, our own pathways through life, the ability to craft our personality based on those experiences. But none of that is true when it comes to somebody who has been mind wiped, because all of that stuff has been determined for them.
Yeah. So I think I've said this phrase, slippery slope, many times in this hour. I gotta say it again.
Slice of sci-fi. Way to end it with some humor. Demolition Man reprogramming. I feel like knitting something right now. Or having some Taco Bell.
Oh, your poor intestines.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So
our hour is up. We have hit that magic hour, Shar, and I think that was a fabulous discussion. But the thing, it's like I said, it's such an open-ended question. I don't really think that there is a real answer to it. That's just really good deliberation.
Yeah, there are no answers. We asked a lot of questions. We explored some potential answers, and we have no conclusions.
So please use the Discord link that Char put into the notes here. Make sure that you click on your subscribe button. Make sure you click on the like button so the algorithm of YouTube just keeps pushing our ability to be seen even more so into this space, because the Babylon 5 community, we're a part of it. Summer, Slice of Sci-Fi, and the Babylon podcast is a huge part of it. A podcast that inspired both of us to do what we want to do.
New viewers. Yeah. Check out this podcast, you guys. You don't even know what's in there. So if you're listening to this and you're watching on HBO Max, when you're done, go check out Babylon Podcast. They are great.
Yeah, so if you have friends of Babylon 5 that are either new or fans that have been veteran for so many years, share this out with them. We have a huge backlog of shows. Shar and I have been doing this for almost about 3 years now. And we are, we are going to be rebranding it. So be patient with us.
Yeah,
for the next couple
a little
weeks.
bit. I mean, really, let's be honest. The experience for all of you watching, it's not going to be that different. It's just different framework for us with potentially better tools to make a better presentation.
Right.
On our end.
And the tools aren't finite unless it's the wrong tool.
Well, you are finite. I am finite. And this stream is finite.
Is wrong tool. So
never.
Anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you again next Sunday with a new topic and something for even more in-depth and deep discussion. And thank you everyone for being here, taking up your time on your Sunday to join us and talk some Babylon 5. So until next time, I have been Norm. She has been Shar. Shar, where can we find you on social media?
Yo, the best place to find me right now, honestly, is not my old Twitter account, which was and still is, the profanity. But check out my new account, which is my more professional, rebranding of my social media presence. It's Shar Writes Code. And I'm talking a lot about a lot of the things that I'm working on as a web developer, because I am undergoing my midlife career change and decided that this is what I want to do for my livelihood here on out. And maybe, just maybe, I actually figured out what I want to do when I grow up. Well, okay, let's not go that far. I'm never going to I'm not growing up. That's overrated, but you know what I mean. So check that out. I'm having fun doing silly things like making TikToks and stuff of that nature, but that's really more where I'm posting. And if you want to interact with me, that might be the best place right now, although I do check the other accounts. So that's that. How about you, Norm?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lounge Lizard. That's LAONGE Lizard. And then you can also find me from time to time doing another show that I do called Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast.
What's that?
It's a Star Trek thing where we talk about Star Trek.
Is it new? What's going on?
It's 7 years new, and I'm only about a year and a half old in it. So
yeah, I'm just giving you crap. Mission Log is fantastic.
So anyway, folks, thanks for joining us. And until next time, be seeing you.
Take care, everybody. See you on Discord.